if you're recycling polyester, that does absolutely nothing to reduce microplastics. It will still leach every time you wash it or even when using it. And we've interviewed the doctors, uh, Dr. Vitak, who found microplastics in the blood, and he said it himself. Like, it's just from everyday use of these items, also from washing, that's releasing the plastics, the microplastics and the nanoplastics. So just using the items, just using recycled polyester, it's going to create contamination.
I'm Meg Carney, an outdoor and environmental journalist, and this is the Outdoor Minimalist Podcast. Thank you for joining us so that together we can create a better outdoor space as we recreate. From greenwashed marketing campaigns to the real tangible changes of sourcing natural materials and overhauling entrenched supply chains, creating truly sustainable clothing is no small feat. And no one knows this better than today's guests, Meli and Rensso Hinostroza, the sibling co-founders behind Arms of Andes. Born in California and raised between the US and Peru, Meli and Rensso have built a brand rooted in their heritage and a mission to reconnect people with nature through minimalist, purpose-driven design. Specializing in alpaca wool apparel, they're confronting the realities of working within a global manufacturing system that wasn't built for sustainability. In this conversation, we'll explore what it actually takes to make garments from 100% natural fibers, how to navigate trade-offs between durability, performance, and environmental impact, and how brands can and should communicate sustainability claims with honesty. If you've ever wondered what goes into the making of that quote-unquote eco-friendly base layer that you brought on your last backpacking trip, or how to spot genuine sustainability from greenwashed marketing, this is an episode you won't want to miss. So thanks for joining me on the Outdoor Minimalist Podcast today. I'm excited to have both of you here. So to start, I am going to have you both introduce yourselves for the listeners and tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to work in apparel manufacturing.
Well, thank you for having us, picking us. I'm really grateful to be here. Well, my name is Meli Hinostroza. I was born in Los Angeles, California. I live in Amsterdam. Our parents are from Peru. My mom from Cajamarca and my dad from Huancayo. So they're from the Andes. And a little bit about myself. My brother convinced me to do this, to do this company. No, it was, my mom had a really big influence on us growing up, how to eat organically and healthy. And our father is like the businessman in our family. He always did business in Peru. And so he always was guiding us on how to do business in Peru. And that just, those two sources of people just influenced us in our career and to make something organic and meaningful. And that's kind of like the start of Arms of Andes and Aya and the way we want to go. And now we apply it to like everyday life, how to live sustainably beyond clothing, like food, mental health. So I guess my hobbies kind of include a bit of that, anything to do with living a healthy life, from like doing jiu-jitsu to doing runs to trying to wear organic clothing and eat organically as well.
Yeah, and I'm Renzo. I'm Meli's brother. We're from LA, from the US. We got into outdoor clothes because we were very interested in the world, very interested in our roots in Peru. Our family, we visited often since we were a kid, and our father was motivating us, inspiring us to look for business opportunities internationally. So we had lots of ideas. We landed on alpaca, and we were listening to a podcast. They were talking about merino wool being great for hunting, and we were like, we had already known that alpaca was a very good fiber technically for the outdoors. So since we had some experience in sourcing it, we were like, okay, why don't we make an outdoor apparel item? And that was the start. So we made a base layer for hiking, and in reality, it was a mid layer. I got the weights all wrong. I confused like the metric system, with the English count. And anyways, that's how we started.
That's really interesting, like all over the globe going on. And
Yeah.
it's cool that you are able to return to your roots in so many different ways. And so can you share a little bit about your current companies? Because I believe there's two of them that are related. And kind of like how their missions maybe overlap. Are they both outdoor apparel related? And do they both deal with natural fibers?
Yes, well, there's a big overlap between both of them because they're both targeted to remove petrochemicals from the our clothing, and to have a vertically integrated supply chain, which is all done in Peru. So we the for Aya right now, it's mostly organic Pima cotton, also alpaca wool, both native to Peru. But Aya is more of a more. It's more than clothing. We're also expanding into like home goods like chopping boards, going into health, like essential oils and shampoo. So I is geared to everything being 100% plastic free from full collections. So you can live like a whole plastic free life. Arms of Andes is more of like an outdoor technical brand. So its main focus is making outdoor apparel. So the base layers, the long sleeve from 100% alpaca wool. We've been debating, should we bring in organic Pima cotton t-shirts, because some people like to use it like on their hikes, although you shouldn't. But it's primarily going to be an outdoor travel, more like outdoor travel type of brand. While Aya is more getting into jewelry, getting into essential oils, topping boards. But there is a big overlap. It's just, yeah, we found that alpaca wool being such a technical fiber, that we do get a lot of technical people that not necessarily are looking for synthetic free products. They're like, I just want the benefits of alpaca, and I don't want a synthetic in it because I can't get the full use of that temperature regulation, of that moisture wicking, and less moisture retention. So that alone, that's always going to be AOA. Some arms of Andes products will probably be on Aya because some of them are plastic free. So just the tape on the zipper on some of the base layers and the full sleeve and the full zip are with a bit of plastic tape. So arms of Andes is very close to being plastic free. It's just that one component.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about synthetic fibers on this show because they really dominate the outdoor industry. So I'm always excited to talk to companies that are passionate about natural fibers and really innovating in that space. And so I do want to talk a little bit about maybe some of the hurdles that you've encountered or maybe trade-offs that you've had in terms of actually developing a technical product that hopefully is durable enough to withstand the outdoor applications.
Renzo, did you? I can answer
But
as well.
okay, so developing it's a product itself is very complicated. So making a prototype is relatively simple compared to having it come into production. You have to hire a whole team, and you have to give them work until the final item is made. So you have to have what's called a balanced line. Every operation in the sequence of constructing your garment has to reach the same number of operations per hour. If not, you have a bottleneck. Okay, so in developing an outdoor apparel item, you have to take into account the design, where the operations per hour is very important, and you have to have it balanced. Um, but apart from that, we went pretty much all in on 100% alpaca, and we did not. We decided from the very beginning we weren't going to deviate. So you can have a brand that you see out there that's let's say 70% like nylon, which is a resistant fiber, but it doesn't have technical benefits until you spray it with a bunch of chemicals, and maybe 30% alpaca or 15% blended alpaca. But it's not going to have the technical benefits of that fiber, of the alpaca, because the majority of the fiber isn't uh, alpaca. So we decided very early on that the fabric we were going to use has to be alpaca. So we weren't going to sacrifice any of the technical benefits in working with alpaca, accepting that the garment construction was going to be very difficult. Because in working with the natural fiber, the fabric is completely unstable. Not only that, it's harder to source. The quantities are a lot smaller. So if we're to third party part of the manufacturing here in Lima, because it's all made in Peru, um, and particularly in the beginning when we were making prototypes, no one would even give you the time of day because the quantities were just way too small. We have to calibrate all our machines to the type of fabric we're using, and it's to every detail. So every hem, every seam has to be perfectly calibrated to a material that's not commonly worked. So the workers working on the garment don't have the experience to work it, and it's a very difficult fabric. So let's say the t-shirts on the hems, all fabric rolls a little bit. The alpaca is going to roll a whole lot more. So we have to develop like air blowers to blow open the hem and be able to run the operations through in balance with all the other operations. And that's just one example. Now we could have blended more synthetics in and it could have made it a lot easier to work with, but we decided not to do that from the beginning. So we were very intentional with not using synthetics to make our lives easier in the garment construction. Later on with the accessories, we definitely started switching from synthetic elastic bands or labels, and we went straight cotton for the labels, cotton and natural tree rubber. And for those, we did test out to make sure that they weren't gonna break or degrade quickly. And there isn't an issue with those. So we did want to make sure we weren't causing any technical benefits with the accessories. So yeah, it's not natural fibers, but it's our main focus. We want to make something that if you go out in nature, you're not contaminating nature as much as possible. So the first step is going completely plastic free. The next step after that is going 100% petrochemical free, where we're not there yet, but we're taking big steps with our natural dyes. We even have a few items that are no dye, no synthetics, no fabric finishing either. So those are the most sustainable items, but it's very limited.
Uh, Sorry, and just to add on to what Renzo was saying, the trade-off with durability. So alpaca wool is the most, I would say, one of the most durable fibers, natural fibers, the most durable natural fibers. But if you compare it to synthetics or blended items like half wool, half synthetic, or even like 10% synthetics, 100% won't ever be as durable as synthetics. It's just it's a reality we have to face. It will never happen. But also keep in mind that synthetics take about maybe 200 like or maybe up to 500 years to decompose. And in alpaca, they decompose naturally. So in the end, like you buy a t-shirt that's mixed with synthetics or mixed with some type of wool, when in a couple years, where's that product going to be? It's going to be in nature where you're trying to explore in the end, where your future people are trying to go. So in our theory, like, yeah, if you don't take care of it well, you might get holes, you might get ribs. It won't last as long. But we have to also accept, like, we're seeing microplastics from the 50s now found deep into our ocean, found in fish and supermarkets. So realistically, is this a good trade-off you want to do for something you're going to hold on to for a couple years and then be like, hey, I don't need it anymore, I'm going to toss it out, and it ends up in the landfill? Because not everything is upcycling. And also doing synthetic blends, like, you're really ruining one of the beauties of nature right there. Like, it does affect the biodegradability once you mix the fibers together. So yeah, in from what Renzo says, well, from the start we did have alpaca socks, and then we did one, and we're like, it was mixed with a bit of synthetic, and it was so easy to make, and it was so much more profitable. But we realized, like, what's the point of this? Like, we already know the synthetics are bad, And we interviewed scientists in this field, and we just immediately, it was like way in the beginning, before, when we had only one color, when the mid layer was like made. And then after that, we're like, never again. We're just going straight into 100% alpaca.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the durability aspect because I feel like with a lot of wool fibers, whether it's sheep's wool or alpaca wool, most of the time they do seem to be blended. So it's interesting to hear like about the process of like what it actually takes to make it durable enough to be used in outdoor settings. And something that Renzo said I want to return to and maybe ask for a little more detail on is the difference between being plastic free and petrochemical free. Because I think a lot of times we're focusing on like the synthetic fibers, plastics, etc. And so, what other areas of the supply chain are petrochemicals really fitting into, and where have you had to eliminate them?
Okay, so um, plastics are a form of petrochemicals. What we consider plastics today are a form of petrochemical, polymerized petrochemicals. And so, uh, just briefly, polyester, nylon, acrylic, um, elastane, so like lycra, um, not only like your paint, paint is plastic. To cover metals, people put polyurethane. That's varnish, lacquer. Those are all plastics. So plastics are in pretty much everything around us. In textiles, apart from having plastics in your threads, in your labels, you also have just petrochemicals, which are the dyes and the fabric finishings. So um, when in general, when your fabric goes to what's called a dye house, which is a big plant to get um, um, where the raw fabric gets washed and dyed. Um, these dye houses ask you if you want to add a bunch of chemicals to your fabrics. So flame retardants, antifungals, antimicrobials, also the dyes as well, and silicone fabric finishing. So our product has GOTS certified dyed. GOTS just means that the manufacturing is up to a certain standard. It does not mean that it's natural for the environment. So that's a point that we have to improve, and we also use silicone. And silicone does have petrochemicals in it. It's silica based, but it still has petrochemicals in it. Those are the two chemicals that our products currently have, um, that we're doing tests to eliminate, but like natural dyes, but it's very difficult. So those are points of improvement. Because alpaca is such technical fiber, it's naturally antimicrobial, that you don't have to put antifungals, antibacterials. You don't have to put a formaldehyde. You can just, you don't like, you don't even have to wash it. People say you can just air dry it. Um, and so that's because keratin has these properties, whereas cellulose and definitely uh, petrochemicals, hydrocarbons do not. Well, the plastics, PET, nylon do not have these properties. So usually in dye houses, they add these chemicals. Now for polyester, it's even worse. In the yarn stage, they completely flood uh, the fibers with these petrochemicals, anti-static chemicals, just everything to make it functional, because it is not a functional fiber. These synthetic fibers are not functional at all. So it's not just that you're having microplastics in your blood, it's that these plastics are filled with chemicals on top of that. So that's the cost. Like nylon can be cheap, polyester even cheaper relative to nylon, but the cost to the environment, to our health, is going to be so much higher with items that don't degrade. So these are done in the dye house stage. Apart from that, there isn't really much chemicals added. So in the actual cutting and garment making stages, it's all mechanical. There isn't really chemicals being added to the product. What you do have is like lubricants for your machines, and those are usually contained within the machine. It's not usually supposed to get on your fabric, um, so that is more controllable. The real damage to the environment, or the major damage to the environment, is what's happening with the fibers for the polyester, the synthetics, or in the dye houses. So luckily with alpaca, we don't have to add nothing to the fiber except for uh, the the dyes and then the silicone.
So also to just add on to that, something else is, so the alpaca fiber, because it has flat scales, it doesn't felt like merino. So merino has scales that prickle out. Um, and because these scales prickle out, they tend to, like, when you wash it, they tend to mesh together, creating like a felting, like a felted fabric. So because of this, you can't wash it. It's probably scratchier on your skin. So what a lot of manufacturers do is they do superwashing. So superwashing is not 100% familiar with the process. I know it contains some type of chlorine gas that burns off the scales, and that allows the fiber to be smooth. But because you're burning off the scales and I believe the outer layer of the fiber of the merino fiber, which is the hydrophobic part, making it moisture resistant, then that outer layer is burned off as well. So what they do is usually dip it like in a resin to help protect again that fiber. So although you find something like, cool, merino wool t-shirt, 100% merino superwash, that's petrochemicals, and then that you have against your skin. So it's these types of details that you really don't know until you manufactured. Um, and the superwash you could get into, like, it took me a while to find information to fully understand why. Like, why are there scales on the merino? Why does this exist? Because in the end, this is nature. Like, nature put it there for a reason. But to get into that detail, like, I can see someone get easily lost in the research, like, oh God, there's fabric finishings, now there's superwash, and now the dyes, like, the world is ending. What are we gonna do? But in reality, it's like, well, fortunately, we're in a country where there's a big manufacturing industry. We come from a country that has lots of natural resources. Our ancestors, the way the Inca civilization lived, our parents, our grandparents, how they lived, we're able to kind of also educate people, because in the end we can't sell to the whole world. There's not enough alpacas, and we can't do it, and we don't want to do it. But we want to inspire the other people to, hey, this is what it should look like. Like, if there's doubts of how a sustainable manufacturing should be or what you should look out in clothing, these are the things to look at. Like how Renzo says, look at the core of the fiber. How is plastic made? It's made from petrochemicals. You have to first look, you have like the extraction, how's it go? The investigation of where the petrochemicals are. Then you have to extract the crude oil from the ground. Then it has to go through a distillery, and then it goes through the naphtha fraction, and then that's created into a chemical process, and then that is put into what looks like a shower head. You get these like plastic long strings, which then are, I believe, twisted into a yarn. This is the same distillery where gasoline comes from. So in the end, the source is like, you're wearing gasoline. You can look at it that way. You're wearing crude oil that's coming from the environment.
Yeah, I mean, you guys both explained it really well, and it is a very complex process, right? And so I am interested to hear more about what it actually took to get to the point you are today. So, Renzo, you mentioned that there's still some work that you have to do, right? You're not completely petrochemical free in your entire manufacturing, but was there already enough infrastructure for you to just kind of hit the ground running, or how did you get to the point you are today?
Um, no, there was no infrastructure. We were, mm, I thought we were the first ones to make Alpaca Outdoor Apparel. There was Appalachian Gear Company as well, that's no longer in existence, to make actual outdoor apparel. Um, and so I guess we both made it parallelly. So there was no infrastructure to work for fibers like this, and worst of all in Peru. So merino wool is the leader for outdoor apparel, natural fiber outdoor apparel. I wouldn't consider cotton outdoor fabric. So and they manufacture generally in China, is where like Icebreaker has their manufacturing sources they're manufacturing from. And so it's not spread throughout the world. It's You're not going to find people who know how to work these fibers for this application. So there was no knowledge on how to work alpaca for outdoor apparel in Peru. There was for fashion, for general high fashion. That's very developed, but not for outdoor apparel, which requires closed knit products, very small, very closed knit products. And so we have to learn pretty much all of it: knitting, cutting, garment making, uh, fabric finishing. We have to develop all of it for this fiber. So we used the existing infrastructure and had to adapt it to our needs from the beginning. So that was very difficult. In the beginning, let's say if I sourced some fiber and I got the yarn, I would have to drive to the outskirts of Lima. I would call up. In the beginning, we would third party a bunch of stuff here in Peru still, and I would drive my car out into the boondocks and into like very like obscure areas of Lima. And if someone goes to Lima, you'll know it's uh, very poor, and these outskirts are very desolate, and it's a very informal economy. So my car would break down. Eventually, I'd get there, nothing would be ready. Then I'd have to like plead that they work with the small quantities I have. Of course, it wouldn't work on the machine. Unfortunately, I also didn't have experience to know what was the problem at the time. So that was a huge bottleneck. My own experience was probably the biggest bottleneck. And then eventually I had to slowly push, make friends, ask a lot of questions, learn how to work the machines. And eventually, we would get our own machines, we'd start working it ourselves. And then we could run a normal production. But this took years. This definitely took years and loads of sacrifice, investment, risk. It was not easy for us. And this is only the production side. It's a similar story with the commercial side, the marketing side. It's a very similar story. Like, we're starting something from zero in an open field, and we have to develop um, techniques that work for what we're doing. So it was hard. I remember some third party people. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not really into fashion naturally. So there's things I wouldn't have noticed, like when they were like turning in shirts, and I was like, all right, looks good. And then there was like the seam broke, but I didn't know if that was normal. So I remember just like looking at one of my providers and being like, it's broken. And I wanted to say, but it's okay. But I just stared at him, and he was like, oh, yeah, yeah. And he seemed all nervous, like, yeah, I'm going to get that fixed. And I was like, in my mind, I was like, oh, okay. And then I realized later on, like, I got a lot to learn about fashion, because as obvious as that seems, that was just one small detail of a lot of things that were going on. We had to make patterns. We had to fit it all into. We have to make our molds. We have to print out our patterns. We had to design our every one of our items while the third party people were making our garments. And so everything only had a part of our attention, and there were so many details. Like, if I did the fabric finishing incorrectly, I could ruin the whole production. So our minds were like split into different areas. So some things that would seem so obvious now, like a broken seam, at the moment, we couldn't focus all of our attention on things like that. We were just like this is going to be 100% alpaca fabric, and that's the value of our product, and that's what we're going to push. So it was very difficult from the beginning in all stages. None of the infrastructure was set up for what we needed. Of course, there were machines, but none of them were adapted to what we needed. In Peru, everything you're producing, and in China, pretty much all of mass production is designed for quick, cheap production. It has to be quick, it has to be cheap, it has to be easy to work with. And that is the definition of polyester. It is easy to work with, it is super cheap, and you can just run and charge your client and desperately look for another client. That is the name of the game in production. You're constantly looking for new clients. The second there's any stumble, you want to get rid of that person. They go to the back of your line, and without telling them, you're already replacing them. You keep them on hold because you want to have them just so people would string me along because they already started a new production, but they wouldn't tell me because they had to, because they were thinking about their business. They're like, this fabric's unstable. I got to put him to the side. I'm going to work this production. And when my production ends, I can have him and I can charge him when I'm finished with his production. This is happening constantly in Peru and definitely in other countries. And it took me a while to realize that. So when you're making something specialty, it's way too expensive to know that you should buy the machines. But the reality is, if it's specialty, you're not going to be able to make it well if you don't.
So
And
is that what you ended up doing eventually, is
yes,
buying the machines?
yeah, and you have to investigate which machines are the correct ones. You got to test them out beforehand. I had to go with my car and bring like 30 kilos and be like, okay, we're going to test this out. And eventually buy them and then realize that you bought something incorrectly, but then you adapt the machines and eventually, slowly but surely, it works out. Your hair starts graying and yeah,
Wow.
yeah, that was the path we took. It was a huge learning curve, and it's worth it in the end because I think a lot of people were recommending to us put polyester, it would be easier, put nylon, it would be easier, even put silk, it would be easier. We had a provider saying that, but you should, the accountants would say you should third party this because it's way too expensive, and it definitely was until we can get it controlled. So the times we did third party, the accountants weren't there to see that part. They weren't there to see like how poorly it was being made because they wouldn't, the third party garment makers wouldn't give it the attention necessary to be able to make it. So what it allowed us to do is not only create a higher quality product, but also develop new products. And that's the key. In taking control of the production, that's when we notice, hey, we could change the threads to cotton threads. And then I realized no one does that. No one talks about cotton threads. Then we realized, can we make an elastic without synthetics? And we asked the provider, and they're like, oh, that's how they used to make them. I'm like, okay, so can we do it? And they're like, no. And then I'm like, can I speak to someone else? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, so can we do it? And they're like, I don't know. I might have to charge you a little more. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And then we'd make it. And then it'd be like, okay, that wasn't so hard. Why isn't no one else making this? It being able to see these things we can improve, I guess, is difficult. But once the path is done, it's not hard. The path is done, you know what to do. And it was the same with the labels. And we're like, okay, let's just change these to natural products. In the end, it's our fabric. That's the technical one. And so being able to run our own manufacturing really let us change all these details, develop products quickly. And for me, it's the most interesting part, the product development. The stress of running a production is very difficult. You have to depend on people, on machines working, It's a whole ecosystem that you have to run. Um, it's not just the garment makers. You have to have people who audit the quality that's coming out. You have to have mechanics that are on site working every day to calibrate the machines that can all of a sudden break down for no reason. You have to have someone in charge who's always seeing the balance. Operations per hour are all balanced throughout the whole operation so that you can have your 1,000 items per day of shirts or whatever metric you're using. And you have to have extra people because people are constantly sick. So I'll start Monday ready to go, and two people are sick, and one person stopped responding to messages. And if you're missing people, you're unbalanced. So literally, what will happen is you're going to see an accumulation of piles of clothes, and what you should have got 100 items per hour, all of a sudden drop down to 60 or 50 in that day. And that happens constantly. So, and there's always a new detail to discover, a new test we're discussing in production. What if we do this test to make the fabric more stable? And we're getting all these details, and we're developing apps in our production to be able to see our percentages. And so it's in one side, it's very fun, like developing systems and trying to be modern, and developing apps in-house to make sure that our line is balanced. On the other hand, when things are going bad, it's like a feedback loop. Like, you have one machine that messed up, and now you have like 10, 20, 30 items that need to be reprocessed, and those took up space. And so then all of a sudden the line's continuing, and all of a sudden they mixed a packet and they put the wrong label because it was all accumulated. So it reached the end, and they're like, oh no, now we have to reprocess this 100 items that have the wrong label. And you got to send that to the back of the line to a machine that's already changed the calibration, because now we're running boxers and not shirts. And you're like, wait, so what am I going to do with these items, and who's going to process them, because 3 people are sick today? And who's going to take out the seams of all these items and redo them? So really quickly, your one mistake can cause disorganization, which leads to more mistakes, which leads to more disorganization. And that was like how we were running production for up to 2 years. It's quite embarrassing. And but then we learned how to just keep a balanced line, to have the right space, the right machines calibrated, the right ecosystem of people, and it's been a lot smoother. But every time we add if you just want to add one pocket, it seems like so simple. It's like the same item but one pocket, but it's not. It's like all of a sudden the hems on that pocket doesn't work, and a little corner keeps sticking out. In the back of your mind, you're like, okay, who cares? But it doesn't look good. In the end, you're like, we just made this whole item, like, we're not going to stop for that one little corner, but it doesn't look good, so you can't approve it, and you have to fix it. And it's just the smallest thing, but since your fabric is unstable, you have a higher probability of those things happening. And yeah, it's difficult, but it's interesting. And when it works, it's really nice. And when we discover new raw materials, like we're working with natural Amazonian tree rubber, we're trying to develop some products out of that, a waterproof poncho. And it's really, that part is super interesting. So yeah.
Meli,
Sorry,
did you want to add something?
I just laughed because we're coming out with a crew neck pocket, like a pocket on the chest. And it took me like a year to get him to do it. I'm like, do it. He's like, no, no, I don't want, I'm not doing pockets. Leave me alone. I was like, people are asking for pockets. They want it in the biker shorts, like, because the world's coming out with biker shorts. And he's like, no, I don't want to hear about pockets. And I had to beg him. And now he's like, oh, these pockets. But I wish, like, we should really do like a before and after picture of like what we first came out with, and just how bad it is to what it is now. Like, wow, the improvement over the last few years in the quality and the design. Like, sometimes I look back at like the beginning and I'm like, who would buy this? Who would purchase this? Looks horrible. But we have customers that were just like, keep going. I want to keep buying. And I was like, okay, we'll see. We even like about a year ago, like 1 or 2 years ago, production was late again. We didn't make it for Christmas to fulfill orders, and customers stayed. And it was like, I'm sorry, production delays, production delays, production delays. They're like, I want it for my son's Christmas, like Christmas gift. And I was like, I'm so sorry, but there's delays. And they would wait. And I was just like, I wouldn't wait. I'd be mad. I'd be like, how dare you? But a lot of them were like, no, we will wait. We'll hold off. And so that really kept us going because we saw like a peak in sales, and I was like, oh no, this is great, but not prepared for this. What am I going to do? And yeah, fortunately, a lot of people still stood by, which I was incredibly grateful for. Like, you don't hear of that.
No, and I mean, when it comes to like high quality natural fiber clothing and apparel, do you feel over the several years that you've had these businesses that there's been more consumer awareness around these types of materials and like why maybe customers would have stuck around because they're like, well, these are the only people that make this. So I have to wait for it, I guess.
I think there was a growing community that wanted 100% alpaca a couple years ago in 2019. I think they had memories of alpaca when they traveled to Peru. And they're like, why isn't this for the outdoor? Because it's mostly used like in coats and scarves. So I think that community just really supported us. And then like when 2020, when COVID hit, plastics started to become a thing. They found microplastics in our blood. So then that community of sustainability started to grow even more. And now with the tariffs that are happening, people are starting to question, where is your garment actually made? Like, it was questioned before a couple of times, but this just, it exploded like, oh, it's made in China. It's, oh, the it's synthetic, it's cheap. You're actually paying $50 for a t-shirt when it's actually like $2 in reality if you look at it because of how cheap it is. So it's definitely that consumer mindset is starting to be way more aware of what they're buying, and they're starting to look at the label. And it's, I like to think it's somewhat similar to the food industry when we're like, let's eat organic, let's not eat pesticides. Where do avocados come from? Where are the coffee beans? Where are these? Like, people are starting to ask the origin. And I was like, finally, like, people are going into clothes. And what I love the most is that they're calling out brands that are blends, saying this is an organic and an organic cotton underwear. And they're like, yeah, 95% of it, but the other 5 is petrochemicals. What's going on? And I'm like, finally someone's calling, like, this isn't 100% wool. And I was like, oh great, because brands like us, like Appalachian, we like are struggling in production to keep that brand. We're 100% alpaca. Don't say you're an alpaca or a wool brand when you only hold like a small percentage of it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up again because I do want to talk a little bit about greenwashing in the apparel industry, outdoor industry, any of those. I know that it across the board happens in every industry, but those are the two we're talking about. And so, have you struggled at all to communicate your sustainability message transparently? You both seem very transparent, so I have a hard time believing that. But um, in comparison to like I don't know. Do I want to call out brands? I guess I will. So, in comparison to a brand, say like Smartwool, that has a larger corporation over it, so VF Core, they have a larger marketing budget than you probably do, larger marketing team, etc. So, I guess how do you approach marketing to ensure that it is honest and that you're combating with these larger companies that might integrate more greenwashing into their messaging?
So actually the trick here was interviewing customers, like getting to know what is it that made you buy from us. And I always thought it was the 100% part that really kind of stuck out, because you can't say you're sustainable or eco-friendly anymore. It's overused. And also, what is sustainable? What is recycled polyester is more sustainable than normal polyester. Cotton, the term is so generalized and overused that no one really stops to think what is sustainable. So when I interviewed customers and started getting to know, they're like, well, I view something sustainable when I know where it's made, when I know that the brand says, hey, this is our supply chain. uh you guys are made in Peru, and on top of that, it's a family company. I did not know that mattered. I mean, in some like ways, I'm like, yeah, cool, we're a family brand, like it's all nice, but I didn't think that was a big key point when people are like, no, it's nice because we're not supporting a board of directors like a corporation. We're supporting a small brand, small business, which doesn't have this big budget to get, or nor even wants to get like third party, manufacturers to do this and to do all these big party things. Because brands like Smartwool, they have big manufacturers that are gonna make what they want to make because they have a big buying budget. But a small company that wants to go buy from a manufacturer, like how Renzo says, they're going to ignore you and they're going to overcharge. So it's super difficult to move forward. So with this like greenwashing, what we have to show is we make it. Can anybody else say that? Can anybody say, I can call my brother now and do a video chat and be like, what are you doing? And he's stressing out in the corners of the pockets and like gonna have a meltdown with these pockets, and I'm gonna be like, cool, make more pockets, keep adding on to them. I want 2 and 3. No one's gonna say that. So it's just, and I hope more in the future, more brands are able to say, yeah, I do it. And I'm sure there are companies in the US, small brands that are like, I make my product in my living room, which I'm like, yeah, keep going, because like how else are we going to get out of this greenwashing thing? Like, so yeah, just asking customers and just showing content behind the scenes and doing stuff that Smartwell can't do. I mean, can they go and start creating, being like, yeah, hey, manufacturer? I don't even know if they know the language of the manufacturer.
So I'd like to add a part to that too. Um, so sustainability is going to be a path that all companies have to go on, and we got to make sure that there is that path. So it's understanding that there's things that we're doing right now that aren't sustainable, other companies that are doing that aren't sustainable, and just raising awareness so that consumers, manufacturers, we can all push each other to become more sustainable. So merino wool is a great fiber, and it's great to have a company that's making 100% merino items. The biggest difficulty that they have is that they have to superwash it, unfortunately, and that's, I haven't understood that there's a way around that. But apart from that, it's a great fiber, it's a great fabric, and it's great that they're pushing the awareness for natural fibers too. The part that I view needs to be critiqued more in greenwashing is the incompleteness, that we all have, but we should bring out to the forefront. And the one I have in mind right now is like recycling, or even, I just want to mention it, but circularity. Okay. That's like a big UN thing as well. And sometimes I feel like it's just a continuation of this whole recycling distraction. PBS Frontline did a whole segment on documentary on how recycling was just a way to push the blame onto consumers and not the manufacturers. And I think circularity is kind of like adding on to that. So they're both completely necessary, but if you're not using natural fibers, it's incomplete. Okay. If you're recycling polyester, that does absolutely nothing to reduce microplastics. It will still leach every time you wash it or even when using it. And we've interviewed the doctors, uh, Dr. Vitak, who found microplastics in the blood. And he said it himself, like it's just from everyday use of these items, also from washing, that's releasing the plastics, the microplastics and the nanoplastics. So just using the items, just using recycled polyester, it's going to create contamination. It's the same with circularity. If we take an old item and cut it and continue using it, it will still leach its petrochemicals and its plastics. Should we do it? 100%. But it has to be with natural fibers. So the new production that comes out next year or the year after has to be more natural fibers. And those items we have to uh, recycle and make circular and have slow fashion. But if we don't do that, then I think we're going back to the same thing over again. Like, oh, it's our habits. We should recycle. We should reuse our items. And okay, some people do it, but in the end, we're still contaminating the environment. PFAS is still being leaked into our water systems, and so it's incomplete. It's a necessary step. It's a step we have to push forward more, but it's also one part, and the other part that's missing is the natural fiber. We have to be using natural fibers if we want to remove the microplastics from placentas, from passing the blood-brain barrier, from our blood. So that's the part I wish consumers were more aware of, that seeing the word recycle doesn't mean much. And plus, it's not really being done at a massive scale. And how often can you recycle the same item? So this isn't really being researched deeply. These are just like very superficial terms. Okay, so we have to create a path that's more sustainable for all brands, and consumers have to become more aware. So one thing is the circularity, recycling, and the other thing is the natural fibers. And we have to push both. Yeah.
Okay, so I think we have time for one more question. So I'm trying to decide what that will be. If you are talking to a consumer, or someone who might be buying clothes, which is most people because we wear clothes, um, what do you think would be like the top things that we should be looking for in a brand, um, that would like align with some of those ethos that you guys have, that it would actually be a truly sustainable brand? They're using natural fibers and they are a more circular system.
Sorry. Right. So the question was, what advice would I give customers when they're looking for
Hmm.
sustainable clothing?
Read the ingredients, like when you're looking for your food.
How dare
Just
you?
first step, read the ingredients. So that's, you see an item, you like the design, that's nice. Read the ingredients: 1% elastane, 2% elastane. All right, 30% recycled polyester. Okay, so then you know those limits, and I think that's the first step.
Well, so yeah, I would say that's the big first step. If you really wanted, if you're quick and you're like, hey, I'm gonna read what's in here. Okay, it's gonna tell you what the fabric's made of, but it won't tell you the fabric finishings. It won't tell you the buttons. It won't tell you any of that. So how Renzo had mentioned before, 100% cotton. You're gonna, if it's like anti-fungal, anti this or whatever, it's a bunch of chemicals you're not seeing. I believe it could also be the same thing with 100% organic cotton. Organic cotton applies to the fiber, the organic Pima cotton um, that's been grown organically, picked organically, etc. But doesn't mean everything else around it was organic as well. So keep that in mind. You have the threads, you have, if you have zippers, you have the tape, you have all of these things, and then you have the dyes. So it's good to start off with the fabric content. If you want to take it deeper, then look at something that's not to do with the fabric content. And I think finally, this is probably the big thing that I've done personally and realized: do 1 week of just wearing natural fibers. Like, try to get boxer or underwear that's 100% wool, 100% organic pima cotton, what it is, just natural fibers, socks, t-shirts, everything you can think of. Just 1 week wear that, and then go to polyester. And I think you'll start, like, your mind will probably switch. There will be a switch in your brain where you're like, okay, now I'm just this, I just can't wear blends and I can't wear synthetics, because you feel the rubber and it's like you're wearing a trash bag. And it's strange. Like I'm helping my mom move and she has carpet. And I'm like, I feel like I'm breathing in these plastic fibers with this carpet. Like, what is this? And your body becomes a bit more sensitive, and then you naturally start looking at clothes and you're like, oh, that jacket looks nice, but it has like that puffy thing on the head of the hood. And I'm pretty sure that's not real fur, and that's probably a fiber. And I don't want that near my face and breathing it in. So, yeah, how Renzo said, check the label. But if you personally do that test, I think something will switch in your head. And it's the same with eating organically. You stop eating fast food and just eat really good food. Your body starts to like pick up like, oh, I can't eat junk food anymore. I feel like that's the same with clothing.
No, that's a really good point. I feel like I experienced that inadvertently when I started to transition into more natural fibers. And then I was like, ew, I don't want to wear that. It just feels weird. Yeah, the underwear was a
Yeah.
great example because I feel like, I mean, that's always the closest to your skin. And so, like, if you transition the underwear first and then you wear a polyester underwear, you're especially out like hiking or biking or something, you're like, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
But anyway, great examples. It was really fun to learn more about your guys' story. I know that it's still kind of a work in progress, but you've made so much progress already so far and are innovating in a space that I think sometimes feels very stuck in their ways. And so how can people learn more about all of your work and hopefully can check out some of your brands?
Yeah. Well, definitely subscribe to our website, armsofandys.com, or EcoAya. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, well, the whole thing. I work really close to my marketing team. And I personally sometimes conduct these customer interviews. So it's not that I work with like a digital marketing agency. It's directly with me and my brother. So if they want to know more, if they're like, hey, love to see I don't know, a rain jacket, a plastic-free rain poncho jacket. Be like, great, we're making it. So we'll let you know, or like any other things that just feedback in general. Always like, please share.
Thanks for listening. And if you like what you hear, let me know. Leave a review and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find us on Instagram at outdoor.minimalist.book, on YouTube, or subscribe to our weekly newsletter at theoutdoorminimalist.com. For even more updates, other educational resources, and to help build an outdoor community with the shared goal to create a better outdoor space as we recreate.